Greetings to you all. I suspect that most of you will recognize that I am Ben Ferencz, and I am speaking to you from Delray Beach, Florida, where you should be at a meeting now around the middle of January. I'm speaking to you as a form of fair warning about what that meeting is supposed to be about. And I want to convey at the outset my appreciation to Cameron Hudson of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum for sponsoring and arranging most of this meeting, and also to all of you who are attending. The purpose of my advance notice is to outline for you briefly what it's all about from my point of view. Those who know me will recognize that 70 years ago, I was a prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials in what was certainly the biggest murder trial in history. It was a product of my having been a war crimes investigator during the war, at which time I saw all of the horrors which are recorded for eternity in the American Holocaust Memorial Museum. And it was for that reason that I formed the association with them fairly recently. A brief overview will tell you that I was born in Transylvania, which was the area between Hungary and Romania. My parents fled poverty and persecution, came to the United States. We lived in poverty most of the time. Eventually, I won a scholarship at the Harvard Law School for my exam in criminal law, and I had decided, even then, before the war, to devote myself to trying to prevent crimes which I'd seen all around me, living in Hell's Kitchen in New York. During the war, I enlisted as an enlisted man, and was eventually discharged as a sergeant of infantry and awarded 5 battle stars for having not been killed on the beaches of Normandy and the other major battles of the war. My final assignments in the Army was to be a war crimes investigator, entering the concentration camps as they were liberated in order to collect evidence for the crimes. I'm sure that the scenes which I witnessed personally and which are recorded forever in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum were adequate to have a traumatic effect which influenced the remainder of my life. When the war was over, I was unemployed like 10 million other soldiers, and I was invited by the Pentagon to return to Germany to help with the subsequent Nuremberg trials. And it was there that I became the chief prosecutor of this most significant trial. But what was most significant about it was it gave us, and it gave me, an insight into the mentality of mass murderers. And they had murdered over 1 million people, including hundreds of thousands of children in cold blood. And I wanted to understand how it is that educated people, many of them had PhDs, or they were generals in the German army, how they could not only tolerate, but lead and commit such horrible crimes. I also learned in that context that war can make murderers out of otherwise decent people. It may come as a shock to some of the viewers who perceive these mass murderers as horrible beasts. Not so. I recognize that war making is a form of genocide, and it should be punishable universally as a crime against humanity, as genocide is condemned. But the illegal killing, that is, killing of large numbers of innocent people without it being in self-defense or without it being approved by the Security Council of the United Nations, is a crime, and it's a supreme international crime of aggression. But since aggression seems to be stalled in that nations hesitate to give the court jurisdiction to act on it, it should be condemned. as a crime against humanity, which is punishable under many domestic statutes. We should study those national jurisdictions which accept responsibility for holding accountable those leaders who are committing genocide, whatever it's called, whether it be a crime against humanity or terrorism or anything else. So these are improvements we have to make in the law, and hopefully we will be able to move in that direction as well. We will never succeed in ending wars totally. However, we can be a catalyst for moving in the right direction. And that is what I have been doing. I've been pushing the heavy rock up the hill. But there has been great progress. The progress goes up and then it comes down. It circulates upward, slowly up and down. And we have made fantastic progress over the years, but we still have a very long way to go because it's such an interrelated with so many other things. However, if I'm going to have any impact at all, it seemed to me that it would be as a catalyst focusing on the rule of law and having that be used as a prime instrument to have people recognize that war itself has got to be abolished. And the impact of war itself on people affected me so that I wanted to stop war making and have in fact devoted most of my life in that effort. Now, many people who heard me said, Ben, the objective is noble, but it'll never happen, so don't waste your time. I never was persuaded. I'm always persuaded that it might never happen, but that I would be wasting my time, I was not persuaded, because even if I could deter some wars, it would certainly be worthwhile. And so I embarked in that effort. I practiced law for a while in New York together with Telford Taylor, who hired me to go back to Nuremberg. He was then a general in the army, and assist him with these subsequent proceedings, as they were called. I came back when those trials were over, went into law practice with Telford Taylor as a partner in New York. I found it quite unsatisfactory, as did he, in fact. He became a professor at Columbia and at Cardozo Law School in New York. And I decided instead to devote myself to trying to create a more humane world. I was very fortunate. I have lived very modestly all of my life, and I was able to save enough money to, and good luck, to invest it wisely or luckily. And I learned that it was better to be rich than poor, and I got to be very rich. And I lived the same humble way I had always lived and still live. My car is only 22 years old, but it still goes, and most of the parts work pretty well. So I don't place much value on spending money on myself. I took care of my children, of course, in their education, and of my wife, of course. We were happily married for over 70 years without a quarrel, but now she's suffering from Alzheimer's, and I try to stay at home as long as I can to care for her. That left me with the problem, what do I do with all this money? I suspected that I was probably not immortal, and it would therefore be necessary to do something with it. And I wanted to do is to give it away where it would be most effective in trying to continue the work which I had started and spent most of my life on, to a world where people recognize their obligations to humanity, where everyone could live in peace and human dignity, regardless of their race or creed. And that's what I asked the court to do in Nuremberg, because I couldn't get justice for 22 defendants for murdering 1 million people. There's no way you can justify that in terms of equality of any kind. And I thought if I can create the principle of law, that the illegal killing of innocent human beings is a crime against humanity, which is punishable and should be actionable in a criminal court as well as in a civil court, that would be a significant and permanent contribution. And it seemed to me that the Holocaust Memorial Museum, which epitomizes and records forever the actual suffering and the conditions in the camp which I witnessed, that they would be a most suitable recipient of whatever funds I might have available. I set up an organization called the Planethood Foundation in order to persuade people that we were all inhabitants of one small planet, and we had to deal with the resources on that planet and the people on that planet in such a way that they could all live in peace and dignity. And it could be done, and I wrote a little book on that as well. And in trying to implement that thinking, I had been distributing small amounts of money to a number of nonprofit organizations, all of them good organizations carrying on noble work consistent with what I was trying to do. But it was taking too long, and I was getting too old. When you see this view, I will be finishing my 98th year on this planet. And it seemed to me that I have to accelerate the donations. But that also required me to specify, how do you do that? So the job I would like to do now, the help I want from all of you there, and most of you are old friends of mine I've known for many years and respected you and you respect your opinion. I wanted you to tell me something very simple sounding. How do you slice the pie? So if you begin with a pie of, say, between $10 and $15 million, and you want to give it away, who gets what, and under what controls and what conditions? And this is something we will go into in your meeting in a couple of weeks from now and give you a chance to think about it. There have been many organizations which have been receiving donations or grants from the Planethood Foundation, which will have to be cut off completely. Some can be reduced. Some new ones, like the Holocaust Museum, has already been added to the list of recipients. And this will be a key question for us to discuss, as well as the further implementation. And so I asked that you be given a fair warning of what was coming and give you a chance to think about it. We will have an opportunity to explore it in greater depth in the couple of days that we will be spending, hopefully in the sunshine in Delray Beach, and then deciding what is the next thing they can do while I'm still able to do anything. So I thank you all for your presence. I look forward to your guidance and your advice, and I hope that it will prove helpful and useful for the next generations to create a more peaceful and tranquil and humane world. Thank you again for everything you've done. Goodbye.